Good evening, everybody, and welcome back then to another stream for the Virtual Endurance Masters, where we are here for round number 2 at Paul Ricard, where in just under 9 hours' time, we will be getting underway with a 24-hour race, the first of 2 this season. But for tonight, we have qualifying around this incredible circuit. And joining me in the commentary box for the first time over on the Virtual Endurance Masters Championship, Jack Canard. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, John, thanks very much for having me. Yeah, excited to see this. 24 hours coming up. It's always a great one, but we've got to get the grid set, which is obviously important. Qualifying, not as important in the 24 hours, but it's still bragging rights and all that good stuff.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. It's of course rather more pivotal in one of the shorter races, but in a 24-hour race, there is all to play for. And we saw very much in the season opener at Watkins Glen, that was very much the case, with an incredible victory for Pole Sim Sports in the Ferrari, and just climbing their way through the field, picking their way up each position, and in the end, after just 8 hours of racing, so a third of a distance that we've got for Paul Ricard, that they were able to take victory. So clearly not the most important of factors, staying out of trouble, very much an important one as well. And of course, like I say, 24 hours of Paul Ricard, quite the controversial circuit at times. Some drivers love it, some drivers aren't too keen.
No, absolutely not. But again, I've heard Paul Ricard has been spoken about in very high regard for the racing, because it does actually provide some good side-by-side action around Paul Ricard. Yeah, I mean, I will admit I'm not the greatest fan of it because of the amount of runoff it has, but at the same time, I can put that aside because consistently it has provided really, really good racing over the years.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And, you know, the GT3 layout that we have, a little bit different to what you're predominantly used to on the Formula 1 side of things, that we've got that big, long back straight between Turn 7 and Turn 8, and that is what really opens up the opportunities. I did see quite the debate from Darren McCormack and some others online as well about kind of this Paul Ricard circuit. He was a very much one that was really championing this circuit for the action that it really allows. And, you know, it also gives us a really interesting dynamic for which cars are going to work, which ones are going to be a bit tricky, because the Porsche, inherently quick in all the corners, all the slow speed stuff, fantastic car, but down that back straight, they're likely to be vulnerable.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you've got different sectors where different cars are going to be strong around here. You know, you've got the Porsches are going to be probably strong in that first sector, but they're not going to have the legs down the long straight into the chicane and then following on into the fast right-hander after that. So this is going to be tight because you've got the Porsches, which are quick in the technical sections. You're going to have the Beamers in the mix as well, which will have the legs, and the Ferraris mixing themselves in there as well. So it's going to be one to keep your eyes on. Porsches, again, they will excel in the twisty stuff, but again, you're probably going to see the Beamers walking away down the straights, but it could even it out when we head into hot lap territory.
Yeah, without a shadow of doubt. And, you know, and also, I mean, the other big factor, particularly when we've got 24-hour racing, is weather. Because when we start to get kind of mixed conditions, we get the rain, and, you know, that was a big contributing factor as to what saw Pole Simsport victory at the season opener, was just getting all of those elements right. The pit strategy, the composure they had in mixed conditions, and maybe those losses that the Porsche will inevitably have in that back straight somewhat mitigated if they do end up running into some mixed conditions.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of ACC in that regard. I mean, you've got is you have those changeable conditions that can flip it on its head. Really, if we get a wet session around here, the Porsche is going to be definitely one to watch, because they're not going to, again, cars won't be able to carry as much speed down the straights. Braking distances will be extended, of course, and it'll be all about mechanical grip through those corners as well. So definitely one to keep in mind is the weather, of course, and it can change at the drop of a hat. So keep that in mind as we head into qualifying in just a few moments' time. But again, we do say qualifying, it's not the be-all and end-all for a 24 hours. But again, would you rather start in the mid-pack, or would you rather stay up the front? Because it can get messy on lap one, even on an endurance.
Yeah, you almost get some teams, particularly when you've got this many hours, and I don't expect too many to go down this sort of route, but you'll get some that even look to deliberately start very much at the back of the grid and just let everyone sail off into the first couple of corners And, hopefully, don't want any commentators' curses running into tomorrow, but, sometimes it can get rather messy and you can have quite the obstacle course to end up making your way through. But, motorsport, it is unpredictable, and the fact is that no matter where you end up putting yourself in the field, but it's so easy for just something to happen somewhere, and and keeping yourself out of trouble on the opening laps when it's busy, but also for that entire 24-hour period is going to be absolutely crucial to getting a good result. And like I said, Jack, we will be going into qualifying in just a moment. For those that didn't see the first round of the season, we have 30 minutes of qualifying. At the end of those 30 minutes, the top 15 will be going into a Super Bowl shootout. Not just any type of Super Bowl, a one-shot qualifying Super Bowl. And that really is where it kind of shows the mettle of some of these drivers to actually, put it all together on that one lap, and that's going to be really tricky for some of these guys today.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it is going to be it is really going to be the challenge for these guys to put it together in that Super Bowl at the end. But again, they're all starting to head out onto the circuit in just a few moments' time. It is going to get a little bit tight for space, of course, because again, we've half an hour to get this underway, and they have basically half an hour to get this lap in. And like we mentioned earlier on, you have got that risk, that inherent risk of rain that could come at any point. So really, you want to get at least a banker time in now in these conditions. Track conditions are optimum. Track temperature 30 degrees Celsius, so it's not overly hot, it's not overly cold, it's just right. But big line of cars heading out onto the Paul Ricard circuit as well. But you can see they've sort of got that thinking in, we can't rule out the possibility of rain. Get those laps in early, get a banker on the board, so if something does happen, you can get yourself safe through the Super Bowl straight away.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we could actually see some interesting tactics in this qualifying session as well. I think particularly if you are one of those cars maybe struggling for straight on speed, you see all the cars snaking their way down this backstraight, almost look like a conga line as they head towards turn 8. If you're in a car like the Porsche example, you might try to time where you placed yourself with another car to get that big slipstream all the way down towards turn 8 and try to just eke out those extra tenths, because it's such a competitive grid in the Virtual Endurance Masters. So eking out those advantages, every thousandth that you can get is absolutely pivotal to getting a good result. But of course, when they head over to any of the drivers that make their way into the top 15, they won't get that same luxury when they get to Super Bowl, so we can see a little bit of a shuffle as they make their way through into that one. And I think we'll head on board with Felix Tanvitzer-Hacker for Pole Sinsport, the car that took victory in the opening round of the season. And Jack, if you want to take us through what it is like for an onboard lap around here at Paul Ricard, it'd be the viewer's pleasure.
Absolutely, yeah, heading into turn 1 then, trying to use as much of the apex on the left-hand side. He is using that beamer to drag himself along as well. Big curb usage in turn 2. Heading down then through the kink at 3, if you want to call it a corner, at turn number 3, then down into turn number 4 here, braking hard, flicking it into the right, again, trying not to hit too much of those big sausage curbs on the left and right side. Again, just trying to use the beamer to drag them through. Slowest corner on the track here now, into the right-hander, dragging themselves onto the back straight here. The car really just wants to get away from you at this point. It's sort of, there's a lot of runoff here, and it's deceptive. It looks like there's a lot more track available, but again, you don't want to run too wide. The lap will get invalidated. Then the big, long drag down towards the chicane. This is where the beamer is going to be the strongest compared to the likes of the Porsche and such. Down towards the chicane in just a few moments' time as well in this part. Well, actually, never mind. We're going to go straight on. That's the far better layout that we've got right here, is the long straight down towards the fast right-hander. Then this is a very hard corner. You've got to be brave to chuck it in here now into the right-hander at the top of the hill, using the curb, and again running all the way out to the left-hand side. You can use that outside runoff there just a little bit, but you don't want to use too much of it either, because again, that will invalidate the time. Again, dragging the car back to the right-hand side again. The camber trying to get away from you there, and into this left-hander again. The camber trying to drag you out wide on the left there as he gets back on the power into the last 2 corners here. in this Pulse Sim Sport Ferrari. Again, the winner from last time, trying to go back to back here as we head into the 24 hours of Paul Ricard. Then into these last 2 corners now. A very tight right-hander to end the lap as well. Feels like it takes an age. Back on the power again, up towards the line. The first times it'll come through, but a tidy lap there from the Pulse Sim Sport car to get us underway. But it's not quite the quickest at the moment with the West competition racing car just pipping them at the front there. But tidy lap, and you can see there are challenges as another Ferrari decided to make his own track in turn 1.
Yeah, there's a little bit of exploring in the opening part of this qualifying session. I do apologise, everybody, for the leaderboard having a slight issue with getting the times up at the moment. I'm not quite sure why we have got that, so I shall try my best to see if I can fix some of these. But pretty good effort from all of our drivers so far in the grid. Right now, it is Christopher in the number 100 SOP BMW. We were saying that those BMWs were going to be pretty tasty around this circuit, although that's a little bit of traffic behind the 222 Aston Martin there. That is currently in the hands of... who does that belong to? That is Jan Gutzlaff. Currently down in 21st position. So negotiating traffic as much of an issue in qualifying as it sometimes can be in the race as well.
Certainly can as well, but there's no harm in getting used to it in this qualifying session. They are up the top now for Chris Severt in the SLP Esports Racing BMW, but again, sort of following what we said, Beamer's very strong around here, getting the drag buff behind that Aston Martin. In that the ACO Racing team has had the wheel of that Aston Martin again. You'll see them running out wide there, just on the exit of the right-hander at the top of the hill. You can do that just about. You can go basically near enough to a car's width off the track there, and the drivers will use that to their advantage as well. But again, there's fine margins there. You've got to be absolutely inch perfect, or that will be, and then validation for your lap. But looking good for the SOP Esports Racing team. Currently the quickest car in the final sector, which is interesting to note as well, Sector 3. Again, you'd nearly call that a tight and twisty section, Sector 3, but again, it still seems the Beamer strong, even in those sectors. It seems to be the Beamer has the legs in Sector 2, Sector 3, but we have here Marco Bischoff in the Kramer Racing Esports Porsche, and they're not a million miles off. I mean, it's incredibly close, and we will talk that these are going to be very, very fine margins across the board here in qualifying. But the Porsche is looking pretty good as it crosses the line and goes quickest in the final sector.
Yeah, fantastic lap, although immediately displaced by Luke Whitehead for Veloce Esports, of course, was the Pro Series champion in LFM not too long ago. And I do apologise, everybody, for whatever reason that part of the overlay is not deciding to play ball this evening. So we will try our best to read out the times as we go. But right now it is Veloce ahead of K Kramer Racing Esports. So Porsches 1 and 2, we said they could be pretty handy in qualifying trim, but right now they're showing themselves ahead of what is a bit of a trio of BMWs, I think, at the moment. In actual fact, seeing as the the West Competition Racing car decides that abandoning that lap is definitely the right thing to do. Well, in the meantime, then, we'll have a look at the Audi of Wojtek Fowler for Williams Esports in the number 5 car. As everyone, again, still trying to get the tyres up to temperature. Not quite, though, for the Williams Esports car on a flyer at the moment, doing pretty pacey things as well. Couple of tenths up on his personal best, making their way through a very tricky double apex right-hander here. So easy to get it wrong and run a bit too wide on the exit. And you really have to swing the car over to the right-hand side again to get yourself through this left-hander. Exactly as you were saying earlier on, Jack. Such a tricky corner, deceptively tricky one as well. And also this penultimate corner here as you fly into this left-hander. Got to hang on to that curb all the way to the hairpin, otherwise you end up dropping all the speed out on the exit. So as he gets the power down and the V10 rolls into life, a couple of tenths up for the number 5 car. We'll see whereabouts that ends up putting Williams, and it goes into P5 with that effort.
good effort from Wojtek Fiala there in the Williams Esports Audi. Again, the Audi as well looking pretty good. So we've got 2 Porsches, 2 BMWs and an Audi in the mix there. As here comes Mattia Kruppi for Jean Alesi and comes across the line and goes P11 in the Lamborghini for now in that Jean Alesi Esports car. Quickest in the middle sector for the Lamborghini right there. So that is the very long straights, which is not a surprise of the V10 in the back of that Lamborghini, but looking very, very good indeed in that middle sector. But again, time to find in that first sector. Obviously had a bit of an error in the first sector there, but again, I think there's more time in that. Eric Del Fante then, the Italian job Honda, which is I think it's the sole Honda on the grid in this championship. So again, they'll have their Honda fans behind them in P8 at the moment. Afraid P5, make that P5 for Eric Del Fante in the Honda. Again, we mentioned the Honda. We mentioned that it could be again a bit of a dark horse around Paul Ricard, and looking pretty good there. But you can see the manufacturers there: 2 Porsches, 2 Beamers, the Honda in P5, the Audi in P6, and then the next car after the 3 line of Beamers there is the first Mercedes of the Xenon racing car in P10, and then Jean Alesi Esports Lamborghini. The Ferraris, though, have to mention 13th for them at the moment. The Pulse Sim Sport car in Yas Heat, 13th and 14th, so some time to find for the Ferraris at the moment.
Yeah, which is a little bit of a surprise, but perhaps where they will come into life is in race trim. And speaking of the Lamborghini, of course, very exciting things not too far away for ACC, as next week we'll be getting 3 new cars: the Ferrari 296, the second edition of the Lamborghini, and then also the Porsche 992. And I know there's a lot of people that are very excited to see all those cars. Also, one was a bit of a late surprise, but actually getting a new track as well over to Valencia, which will be quite the interesting one. And yeah, Eric Del Fante, oh, that's a big slide on the exit of turn 8 there. Managed to keep that one all under wraps, just about. But I do believe it was this car that actually took pole position, and a scruffy end to that middle sector sees the lap abandoned. But was just going to mention that the Italian job car, I do believe, was the pole sitter for Watkins Glen, but just didn't quite put it together in the race. It wasn't the easiest of days, admittedly, maybe not helped by some of the mixed conditions. The Honda is inherently a tricky car to drive. It has a sense of uncertainty about it underneath you sometimes. It doesn't always give drivers the greatest deal of confidence. A little bit unpredictable kind of its own right. The Porsche, very quick, back end can swing around on that car quite easily. Ferrari's known to have some questionable suspension physics at times, so each of these cars has their own quirks, and sometimes it just takes time to really get yourself settled into these different type of GT3 layouts.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you've got to put the work in to get these cars up to speed. But they do have their quirks, and trying to get on top of them is a big challenge. It's a big line of cars down the back straight there as we're looking at Brier Madra in the Porsche Spinala team, which is ironic because they're in a Ferrari. Coming up to the right-hander. They're down currently in 41st, up on their time at the moment. But remember as well, to go through to that Super Pole, you got to be in that top 15 when we get to the end of this part of qualifying. Think Q1 style of F1 that's what we're thinking, but everybody else will get basically sort of eliminated, and they'll start where they qualified below the 15th place cutoff. So keep that in mind as Brier Madra comes up the last 2 corners now. He's about a 10th of a second up on his best right now. We'll see if that promotes him up anywhere. Just behind the Low Field Motorsport Ferrari. Coming through the last corner now, gets on the power nicely up to the line then for the number 15 Ferrari. Let's see if they can improve their position with this lap coming across the line, and it looks like they have not improved their position, did not have a good final sector. 17 minutes then left on the clock, and still plenty of laps still to come, but there is very much still a battle going on. You can see West Competition Racing currently now at the top in the BMW at the moment, ahead of Veloce in the Porsche and Mattia Kruppi in the Lamborghini. For Jean Alesi Esports, trying to get themselves inside that top 10, is on an improvement, up by a 10th of a second, coming out of the final corner now in this Lamborghini. Comes up to the line and promotes itself up to P9 with the fastest middle sector. So the Lamborghini very strong when there's no corners, it seems.
Yeah, it's ever since the kind of ever since ACC had a bit of an overhaul not too long ago, that has really been the strength of that car. Straight line speed, mechanically, aerodynamically, still not great. So reason potentially why quite a few people are excited about that car going into that second edition that is making its way to ACC. Whether or not kind of those flaws about the base of that car, mechanically and aerodynamically, that they start to sort themselves out and overall arrive a bit more of a competitive package. But yeah, John Lacey Esports, I think, quite a specialist team in the Lamborghini, so really extracting a great deal of pace from that car, and that'll also give them good confidence going into tomorrow as well, because that back straight is primarily the main overtaking opportunity. You want a car that is good in a straight line for two reasons. One, because you want straightforward overtakes. In a 24-hour race, you don't really want to be messing around with a car that is kind of having to take its advantage in the corners. That's something that all of those drivers in the Porsches are really going to be having a little bit of a tricky day with in that regard. So you want a car that can make its way past other cars by just driving very nicely and easily past. The other thing is defending, with inherently the greatest opportunity arguably being towards turn 8. It very much promotes the fact that if you want to hold up those cars behind, as it gets a little bit tricky with cars emerging out of the pit lane whilst others are still on their laps, that being able to defend those positions is crucial, and just having a car that has good straight line speed is a very nice and easy way to fulfill that exact piece of criteria. So as we go just under halfway through this session, still West competition racing at the top of the time sheets in the BMW, followed by a bit of a double-decker Porsche sandwich up until the next BMW, with Veloce leading K Kramer Racing Esports to round out the top 3, and a little bit of a mix in the closing stages of the top 10. The Honda of the Italian job team, with Williams Esports in the Audi, of course, and the aforementioned John Lacey Esports in the P9 in the Lamborghini, with the lead Ferrari now going the way of Team Shazoo GT Omega. So good stuff from them. Had a bit of an unfortunate outing over at Watkins Glen, had an almighty impact with the barrier, that very tricky and deadly chicane in, I think, around the 3-4 hour mark of a race. A very disappointing end for them on that one, but putting in a pretty promising effort at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yaroslav Honza gets very loose in the right-hander, has to head off into the escape road and has to head back to pit lane. So it is getting a little bit tight up there for that cut-off position. So we'll keep our eyes on that. William Pisano in the Restec Reparta Corsa Mercedes coming across the line now. He's 26th at the moment. It will not improve positions by the looks of it in that Mercedes, so there's still plenty of time. It's currently the Prime E-Racing Mercedes is on the cutoff in P15, and the Pulse Sim Sport car is in 16th place at the moment, just behind that Superpole cutoff at the moment. There is Felix Tasvinza-Hacker in the Pulse Sim Sport Ferrari, now 17th, so there's continuous improvements going on throughout this as more and more cars start to pop in times, and we'll see if they're going to be able to get themselves through to the Super Pole session in just a moment. Now the Xenon Racing Mercedes is on the cutoff. Yashit Esports with Yaroslav Honzik in 14th, Unicorns in 11th, 13th as well, so very, very tight indeed. But again, the fastest Ferrari, as you mentioned, is P11 at the moment, so again, a lot of work to do for the Ferraris, but again, they could be the ones to watch in race trim later on tomorrow. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But there's 12.5 minutes left on the clock, so still a lot of time left on the clock for these guys. But I have a feeling this is going to get a bit frantic towards the end. It could really be anyone to get themselves through here, because it's constantly changing around that cut-off point. But the Mercedes of the Xenon Racing car is the one that's clinging on for dear life in P15 at the moment.
Yeah, we see Felix Tasvinza-Hacker obviously feeling that pressure. Last round's winner, trying desperately to eke out every advantage they can, taking out a little bit of slipstream off the, I think that was the Prime E-Racing Mercedes on the back straight there, just about, oh dear, that was a BMW, went off into Narnia in the background. I think that was the second West Competition racing car, if I am not mistaken, that went off on the edge of turn 8. No issues though for the number 52 car. But yeah, they've got a little bit of work to do. 10th of a second up on their previous best, so maybe enough just to scrape their way through into that top 15. Of course, when we head over to Super Bowl, maybe in the end it won't ultimately affect their position too much, but you want to make it into that top 50. You want the opportunity for others to maybe get it wrong under the pressure of that one-shot qualifying. You just bump yourself up a couple of extra positions going into tomorrow. Has maintained that advantage all the way to the line for the 52 car, and crucially P14 and the third of the Ferraris currently making their way into that top 15 cutoff. And now it is Yas Heat Esports, clearly a very talented lineup and big name in ACC, but right now find themselves in a little bit of potential jeopardy.
Absolutely, yeah, 53.2 for the Pulse Sim Sport Ferrari on that lap, and that puts them P14 for now. But yes, a lot of work to do for Yas Heat Esports, currently on the cutoff in that Ferrari. Again, now they're currently on an improvement. Jaroslav Honzik at the wheel of this Yas Heat Ferrari, number 296, currently equal with his best first sector at the moment, coming up the back straight now, and this is what they're going to need to get. We're going to ride on board with Jaroslav Honzik then as he heads down the straight in the Ferrari. This is a big moment now, but they want to get themselves safely through, but the Ferraris really seem to be the ones that are struggling for pace in this qualifying section at the moment. Chucks it in to the right-hander using that curve. You can see the suspension crying enough over the curbs as he heads now into the braking zone for this double right-hander. The car trying to drag its way out to the left-hand side, trying to just coax it back to the apex on the right-hand side. Then into the left-hander they'll come now. That's probably one of the trickiest corners on the track here. Trying to get into the apex there. It's actually off camber there. Trying to drag you out to the right-hand side. Back on the power again for Honzik as it comes through towards the last two corners. Wants to get himself safely into Super Bowl, but is currently on the cutoff. Let's see if this is enough to get him off the cutoff, at least for now. Coming out of the final corner now for the Ferrari. Let's see if this is going to be enough to get himself into the next part of Super Bowl. Comes across the line now, equal with his best time, and just does a 53.317 and stays 15th for now. So still work to do for the Yas Heat Esports Ferrari, but they're still currently, if it stays the way it is, they will make it through, but they can't be guaranteed of that.
Yeah, it's getting very close. I'll tell you what, though, someone is on an improvement. It's a pretty significant one of that. Is Fiala in this number 5 at Williams Esports car. Had a troublesome time with Watkins Glen up to the front row, though. Of course, won't be the final order for these guys sitting in the top 15, but one would have to think that with just under 10 minutes left on the clock, that'd be enough to see the Williams Esports team through to Super Bowl. So great late effort there from them. We'll look a bit further down the order to Jan Gutzlaff in the 222 Aston Martin, who's currently making their way through the first sector at the moment for the Homer Sim Racing Esports team. And this Aston Martin, it's a car that isn't likely to be the most competitive outright in qualifying trim, but over the course of a race may start to be a little bit more competitive. A very stable, very forgiving platform of a car, and pretty handy in a straight line as well. So you combine those things with some mixed conditions, maybe perhaps a little bit of chaos up and down the order as well over the course of 24 hours, and even small things like having a car underneath you that gives you confidence. I've unfortunately contradicted my own point there, because I was going to say doesn't contribute to track limit warnings and get you a drive-through penalty, and in the process Gutzlaff unfortunately completely undid my words there and invalidated Lappers has backed out of that one. So maybe still having a little bit of teething issues with that car through that part of the lap. Very tricky to keep it in check there, and we've seen time and time again mostly cars like the Mercedes. Mercedes doesn't tend to like that kind of high-speed entry corner with a bit of a blend on the throttle. Suzuka 130R, another very tricky corner for that car. So you'll often see teams have to really focus their setups for the Mercedes around a particularly troublesome corner, and then everything else becomes a compromise, and that really can hamper the performance that that car can achieve during the race. Combine that with the fact that it's a pretty thirsty V8 in the front of that car as well, and maybe not always the most competitive of cars for an endurance style event, but still definitely some good pace in there. And moment it is Xenon Racing that is in P16, right on the brink of trying to make their way into that super pole. Someone I think just shifted up the order a little bit in all of that. The Italian job is rounding out their lap, but it's looking a little bit back and forth on the time, and I don't think right now it's going to be an improvement for the Italian team.
No, it's about a tenth of a second down. I think that was Veloce. I think he just did an improvement there, or one of the top guys just demoting SLP Esports down one position and everybody else down one as well. Puts Yas Heat on the bubble. Eric Del Fante crossing the line, 53.2. Not an improvement, but stays in P7 for now in that car for at the moment. Here's Kevin Wren, GPR Esports BMW. This is the guys further down the order, P37. On quite a significant improvement at the moment is the GPR Esports. About 6/10 up in the first sector alone for the number 111, the 111. And we'll see if they can continue this. Obviously now already a second up on their best in the first part of the lap. So this could be certainly one to keep your eyes on. They haven't put a set of representative time at the moment. So again, just psychologically, having that green delta in your peripheral vision is quite helpful to just pushing on and see what you can do here. Up towards the fast right-hander now. Currently 37th. Need to be inside that top 15 to get themselves through to Super Pole, if they can do that at all, and see what they can pull together. Coming through the double right, gets steps away from him in the middle of the corner, manages to hang on to it though, and keeps his way through, keeps his foot planted, traction control kicking in midway through the corner there, but keeps it going, and well held Kevin Wren through the middle part of the right-hander. But that is the danger of that corner right there. You carry a lot of speed into there, it will step out on you, and that is a prime example. 4 and 3/4 minutes left on the clock here. Let's see where this is going to put the GPR Esports BMW. Again, 2.5 seconds up on their best, but they'll know that there's more time in that with that big slide through the double right. Crosses the line now. There's a 54.220 and does not improve their position after that one. So that was, again, that time lost with that big slide may have got them a bit ways further up, but there you go. That is the nature of that. So there's just 4 minutes left. So this is going to be the mad dash now to the line for everybody else. Xenon Racing in P16 are the ones trying to get themselves in, but it is going to be a mad dash to the line now, and Williams are on a big improvement here. My word.
That's a mighty first sector, isn't it, from Fiala? I'm almost questioning a little bit.
Almost a bit too good.
Yeah, because combine that with the GPR Esports car, according to the leaderboard as well, was going purple at certain points on the circuit, and of course didn't end up improving their position. So I'm a little bit unsure about this. I do apologise, as some people noticed in the chat. Yeah, we don't have the session lap times because something a little bit weird with the overlay, unfortunately, has plagued us for this evening. So the only bits of telemetry that I can get working are the improvements in terms of the Delta getting a bit busy behind, in actual fact. Fiala there, the Aston Martin and the Porsche going side by side, and I think the Porsche ended up conceding there. I don't think too ideal for either of their lap times. But right now, I'm not convinced it's a 3-second improvement for Fiala in the number 5 car, but still perhaps is an overall personal best, as the Veloce Esports Porsche getting out the way on the exit of turn 9 there. And now Audi making its way through to the final corner. Tricky car to extract pace out of, but Williams obviously confident that they could do that. Of course, very, very experienced and competent team, and a great field of drivers behind the wheel. And for Williams Esports, it won't be an improvement, despite the lies of the Delta 52.902, still being a bit shy of West Competition Racing's best effort. But with 2.5 minutes left on the clock, that one would have to think that they would be fairly safe in how it stands at the moment. Some of these deltas I think we may have to take with a slight pinch of salt, with Low Fuel Motorsport going 32.7 seconds faster on their current lap. So we'll see how it all plays out. But crucially, right now, in those final few minutes, last round's winner, Tanzvin Zahaka, in that 52 Ferrari, right on the cusp of making it through into Superpole.
Yeah, and currently the Xenon Racing Mercedes not on an improvement at the moment, and looks like they may just get themselves through here, but there's still time to go here. 1 minute 30 on the clock for these guys, and I think the 2/10 improvements are a little bit more reasonable to look at this time as we come through the final sector. Sven Pau in the TMMS Performance BMW, P27 currently, 2/10 improvement. I think they're going to need a little bit more than that to get themselves up into Superpole. But again, these are still all for grid position. They will just won't make it into Superpole, but they will start from where they finish in this qualifying session, from 16th down. So let's see where the number 50 BMW can go. Here's the come towards the line. Big improvement in that final sector there. Half a second found for them as they cross the line now, and do not improve their position, but do improve their time in that BMW. So still time on the clock for them. This will be their final attempt here to come through turns number 1 and 2. But it seems for the moment the top 15 look set, unless guys like Xenon Racing or Visceral Esports can find something here. Visceral are on an improvement here. Jeffrey Ritchie in the Visceral Esports Ferrari, of course, a name I would know from the F1 side that I've jumped over from. But Visceral Esports, number 44, they've found some time in that first sector, but again, could it be enough to get themselves through, even to just jump in front of the Xenon Racing Mercedes, get themselves a position here? But it looks like they're going to need a big improvement in this final sector here to get themselves into that cutoff. The Pulse Sim Sport car has come into pit lane, so they're not going to improve. So basically, it's all down to the Visceral Esports car if Pulse Sim Sport are going to get through here, but they probably are going to need a massive final sector here to get themselves through. And again, just running a bit wide, losing a bit of time there. But again, it could be very, very close here, but let's see if they can do it.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky trying to hook that Ferrari up in the final sector. A couple of awkward corners for this car we've seen. It's a little bit of an uncertain one. Sometimes every time you hit a bump, you're never quite sure what that car is going to do. But right now, the number 52 car, the team that took the round win at Watkins Glen, all sitting there biting their nails waiting for Jeffrey McGowan. Oh, and he's abandoned the lap, so there's the answer in that then. So I think based on that, unless Polyakov, who is on a bit of an improvement further down the field, ends up pulling out quite the blinder of a lap, I think the top 15 will be set there, and I think it would have been a sigh of relief from a lot of drivers. In actual fact, on my leaderboard, Tanzvin Zahaka for the 52 crew showing in P14 at the end of that session. So I have to see once the results come through in just a moment. But Polyakov now, I think, last driver on a potentially competitive lap time to adjust their position, and then we will be making our way over to that Superpole session, which is definitely going to be a pretty busy one for this evening's action, to then set up the grid for tomorrow's 24-hour race. And what a challenge it is going to be. And in the end, that Polyakov won't end up rounding out his lap, and we will end up going over to the Superpole session in just a moment. And I think that will be pretty much in motion in just about 5 minutes time. So we will try to run through the results when we can of that initial qualifying session, and then have a bit of a closer look at those lap times, because, of course, unfortunately couldn't quite follow some of that information throughout that. I think, in actual fact, I have to make a tactical decision here as to whether or not I back in and out of the server. That's always a little bit of jeopardy. Try to see if we can get that telemetry going into the next one. But I think perhaps for Superpole, because we will be able to read off those times as they go by on each lap, I think that I may leave it for that one. But hopefully everything will be up and running going into tomorrow's session. But for the first 30-minute session of this event in round 2, a pretty interesting one, that. BMW is looking very strong. Porsche is surprisingly strong in qualifying trim, but the Ferraris struggling more so than we might have expected.
Yeah, as you said, do seem to be struggling quite a lot. Probably surprisingly so, but again, the Beamer is unsurprisingly very, very strong up at the front end as well. The Honda in the mix as well, and possibly the underdog of the whole lot is the Williams Esports Audi. The Audi's looking very, very good in around this track as well, so one to keep your eye on there. But seems to, the Mercedes and the Ferrari seem to be the ones that are not having the best of times out there in qualifying trim at the moment, but we'll see what happens tomorrow. But it seems like it's Beamer territory at the moment out here in Paul Ricard. Probably not a surprise to many, but the Porsche's in the mix in qualifying trim at the very least. It remains to be seen whether they'll be in the mix for the race. But again, the Audi possibly one to watch for sure. That Williams Esports car looking very good.
Yeah, without a doubt, and it's a bit of it's a bit of an unusual one in kind of how it sits with the other cars in the grid, because it used to be one of those that, when the Evo 2 edition of the Audi first hit ACC, it was an absolute rocket ship. It was incredibly fast, but ever since it ended up going through its nerf, not quite the same level of performance that it used to have in that GT3 platform, but still on its day and in the right kind of conditions and with the right type of drivers on the right sort of setup, and when you're really feeling confident behind the wheel of that car, still very much one that you can extract a decent amount of pace from. So it's going to be interesting to see how that translates over into the 24-hour race that will be getting underway at midday UK time tomorrow, 1 o'clock Central European time. Will be kicking off for 24 hours of action. Just a few minutes until the Super Pole session gets underway, and then we will have all of our drivers kicking off for one final series of laps where they each get one chance apiece at trying to put in their final best efforts to put it all together and see where they can get their teams inside of that top 15. If they completely lose the car and end up having a right mare of a lap in the Super Bowl, the world is not completely ended, as they will finish no lower than P15. But of course, if you are someone maybe running around in the top 5 after that initial qualifying session, you're going to want to kind of try to repeat that level of pace in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you are gonna want to give it everything, but again, you have got that sort of risk mitigation that that you're not going to do any worse than 15th, but you also don't want to start 15th either, because that is it is towards the top end, but it's still in the mid pack, so to speak. So you want to again get yourself as far up the order as you possibly can, save yourself some early hassle, really, in the first part of the race. So keep that in mind with these guys, but they will be, of course, giving it everything, but it does put a lot of pressure on. You only get one lap. Of course, get your out lap to get tire temperature in, etc., but then you only get one attempt to hook a lap together. So it's all going to be about who can perform under pressure, and we'll see who's going to be the best at that. So again, there is clear track in this one as well. There's going to be no interference with traffic, etc. So there's none of those excuses can come to mind. So it's all going to be about car, driver, and see who can hook up a lap under the pressure of having only one attempt to do so. And that is the beauty of the Super Pole sessions.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a very interesting one, because when we had 30 minutes of qualifying, and drivers were able to get in kind of anywhere around sort of 13 laps, kind of from some teams, 14 on other occasions as well. And as a result of that, it really did enable drivers to get their eye in over a long period of time. And when we're going into this Super Bowl session, they don't have that same kind of luxury. It's not going to quite be the same story for some of those drivers, and that's something that that really can be a big difference maker in such a competitive field. So we will be going into this Super Pole session, and everybody starting to get underway. I do need to try to track down some of these cars, because we've got a few extra still sitting around in the server. I do believe it is the 33 car of Marco Yonkers. That will be the first to set out and try to complete their lap. And I tell you what, some of those cars where they took time to build up confidence, took time to extract the pace, like Williams Esports making that last effort in the final few minutes to get themselves towards the front row. In a one-shot qualifying, when it all comes down to that one perfect lap, we see a little bit of a wiggle for West Competition Racing in that 33 car, that maybe that's not the platform that you ideally want in a situation like this. And also sometimes these cars maybe take a bit longer to get the tyres up to temperature, different ways in which they fire them up, and it certainly can make for quite a tricky one to negotiate. But the Dutchman of Yonkers in the 33 BMW then will be the first to head out on track and try to put a lap together, and then we will see what this all ends up boiling down to in this Super Pole session as he makes his way out of the final corner now. And I think we will go for another onboard. We've had a couple of onboards with the Ferraris today, but let's go on board with Yonkers in this BMW and see what it's like on board the front-engined German outfit for this one. Much more predictable platform for the most part, but maybe a little bit heavy and a bit tricky to wheel through these tighter and twistier corners.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you could sort of see there's a lot more going on in the cockpit. It's quite a big car, this BMW. So there's you can see even just the size difference when you go on board with it compared to the likes of the Ferrari and such. But yes, it's a heavy car, front-engined, but there's still plenty of power down the straights with this car as it heads down the back straight here with the Fanatec steering wheel that he's got in the car as well, which is a wonderful addition to have. If you've got any money to spend, you can buy that wheel, put it on your rig. But I don't know how much it costs, and I don't really want to know how much it costs to put that on. But it's a cool flex. If you're a racing driver, you can bring the wheel that you've got on your sim, bring it back home, put it on your rig. So Marco Yonkers then in the West Competition Racing number 33, heading into the right-hander. Again, had two attempts to turn in there and just about got it through in that BMW, but it looked absolutely planted on the exit at the very least. So it comes into the double right now in the number 33. Gets it into the apex nicely, and it just looks very settled coming through those corners there. Heading into the left-hander now. One of the trickiest corners on the track, just nips the curb a little bit all the way out to the right-hand side. Looks hooked up, looks very nice. Coming into the final two corners then for the West Competition Racing BMW. Let's see what he's going to be able to do in this second session of qualifying. Out of the final corner then for West Competition Racing. What time is this going to be? We're around the 52.8 mark in the first part of qualifying. Here it comes across the line with 53.0 for the West Competition Racing car for that first time. Pulse Sim Sport again, they got through in P14 in the last session of qualifying. Let's see what they're going to be able to do now. Felix Televisa Hacker coming up to the line now, getting the slipstream off the John Lacey Lamborghini as well. And this is going to be a 53.9, so still a lot of time to find, but 9/10 of a second off of the Beamer here. The Williams Esports Audi 53.1, a 10th behind the lead BMW there, but showing again the struggles of the Ferrari, about 9/10 off on that first attempt.
Yeah, West Competition Racing the second car now, and does a 52.8. Purple in all three sectors in that as well. I can't quite see the car number that is making their way down. I think that was the Italian job car of Eric Del Fanta that just crossed the line to go into P4. Then we have the number 48 car of Marcel Tamo in the Yeet Esports BMW. Let's see what they can do. But it's pretty tight at the top of this grid. P5 for the next of the BMWs. And we've got 296 car of Jaroslav Honzik, the first of the Ferraris, I think. Second of Ferraris to cross the line. Let's see if they can get manufacturer's honours. And for the time being, it's good enough for P6. I think based on their initial entry into this qualifying session, they might be fairly happy with that one, as Simone Lezzi in the 85 BMW goes up into P5. And then next car to come along is Florian Duakop in the number 4 Ferrari.
Yeah, Unicorns of Love then crossing the line. P6 for them, currently 53.407 in the number 4 car. So that is a decent effort for them. Mattia Kruppi then, John Lacey Esports in the Lamborghini. Let's see what they're currently doing, but it's currently the West Competition Racing 1-2 at the moment, up at the front of Superpole. So let's see what the number 38 Lamborghini can do. We know they're strong, very strong in that middle sector. Let's see what they can hook up then, coming out of the final corner, up towards the line. Let's see if they can get themselves in that top 5, maybe crossing the line. They can. P4 for Mattia Kruppi and John Lacey Esports, and again that middle sector, the strong part. But again, Chris Severt then in the SOP Esports Racing BMW, they were very, very strong in the first part of qualifying. Here they are in Superpole then, and he is on an improvement at the moment, was challenging up in that top 5. So let's see if they can spring a surprise here. West Competition Racing 1-2 at the front, Williams Esports in the Audi currently sitting in P3. But it's currently Beamers 1 and 2 at the moment. TSR Esports are in there as well. P4 for them. Excellent effort in the 777. And then John Lacey Esports in the Lamborghini in just behind in that next position. And then the Honda of the Italian job just behind them. Here comes Chris Severt then, number 100 in the SLP Esports Racing car. What is this going to be for the American? Crossing the line then in that car. P3 for him, the best final sector of anybody. 53.1, and it's third place, and it makes it a BMW 1, 2, and now 3.
Yeah, there's not many people left to have a say, and now only 2 drivers left to go in this Super Bowl session. Luke Whitehead for Veloce Esports, now renowned to be an absolute weapon behind the wheel of that Porsche, but we know it's a car that's a little bit compromised in terms of outright pace around here at Paul Ricard, and it's mostly down to this back straight just longing for it to end. And we'll see how committed he is as he makes his way up towards turn 8. It can be such a demanding corner, but the back of that Porsche looks pretty good, using all the track and a little bit more on the exit, tucking his way into turn 9. Their long right-hander and going all the way out to the very edge of the circuit a little bit more. And now trying to commit to his next couple of tricky corners. This is where the Porsche does start to rein in some of that lost lap time and really start to gain an advantage. Not exactly where you want it to be fast in the race, but in qualifying doesn't matter where you're quick as long as the end lap time is good. That's all they'll be caring about. So the young British driver coming through the final corner now, tucks the nose into the apex, flat 6 roaring in the back of that car as he then sends it towards the start finish line. What's it going to be for Luke Whitehead for Veloce? P6, and I think considering some of the disadvantages that car is facing, I think they'll be fairly content with that result. I think same goes as well for John Lacey Esports, currently sitting in P5 with only Letterman for Wild Things Racing that may have something to say about it.
Yeah, here he comes then. He's the only car out on the circuit at the moment in the BMW. 1, 2, and 3 for Beamer at the moment, followed by Audi. Then you've got the TSR Esports car, John Lacey Esports in the Lamborghini. Then Veloce in the Porsche just behind them. Then the Honda of the Italian job just behind them in P7. Team Racing Point, then Unicorns of Love in the Ferrari, I believe, in P9. And then Yeet Esports in the BMW. But Sakari Leighton then in the number 26. BMW. Let's see if they can pull a surprise here, coming through the final sector. Track all to himself at the moment, coming to the left-hander, that very tricky left-hander, and again the rear end looked completely planted through there, looked really, really good. 30 seconds left on the clock. He will be the last car to cross the line, and we'll see if he can get himself maybe inside this top 10, coming through the final corner now. Leitonen trying to get himself further up the order. See what he can do then. Up to the line in number 26, Wild Things Racing BMW. Is it going to be an improvement for him? Crossing the line now, it's P11 for them. So then you go. West Competition Racing 1 and 2 then for the Paul Ricard 24 hours tomorrow. SLP Esports Racing in P3, Williams in P4, and then TSR Esports in P5 for them. So very, very close, but West Competition Racing with a 52.817. Getting pole then by about 0.2 of a second.
Yeah, fantastic stuff from those drivers at the end there. And we'll try to have a final run through of these results in just a moment. But what a session that was, and what a setup it gives us going into tomorrow's race. It's going to be such an interesting one to see how it all plays out when these drivers end up going for 24 hours of racing here at Paul Ricard, because it is a circuit with so many demands, so many challenges that are really going to push each and every single one of these drivers to their absolute limits. And there we go. We can actually have a look at the Super Pole results there. And once the competition racing taking a 1-2 in the second qualifying session of the season. Fantastic stuff from them, and SOP Esports rounding out the top three, making it BMW 1, 2 and 3. Said it could be potentially a fast package. Curiously, at the end there, we seem to have an additional elect of K-Chrome Racing Esports that would choose to be in that Super Bowl session. For some reason or another, did not end up running. I don't know if maybe they had some sort of technical issue in that. But Williams and Jean Lacey Esports rounding out the top five. Veloce, the Italian job, Team Racing Point, Unicorns Love, and Esports, Unicorns Love, Cross Pole Sim Sports, and Yeezy Sports rounding out the top 10 with Wild Things Racing, Yaseat, Pole Sim Sport, going down to P13. Last two positions in the Super Pole session going the way of, I believe Shazoo was in there when the scoreboard makes its way back across in just a moment. And those last two positions heading to the Veloce Sports car. Must be the second Veloce Sports car. So I think that's actually also happened, because I'm seeing a very weird gap and delta in there. I think the team didn't participate in the Super Pole session. So a little bit of an odd one in all of that, but still nonetheless a very, very exciting bit of action, and it gives us a really nice teaser heading into tomorrow's 24-hour race. Not sure if we will have anybody for an interview. Sometimes our drivers do tend to be a little bit on the shy side for that. But we will hang around for just a few moments, just in case anybody does look to join. But I would expect chances are possibly not with that. But what a fantastic bit of action for Friday night. And, main takings from that, I think, is that, this is a 24-hour race. Clearly advantages for different cars in different sectors. BMW, good platform overall. Lamborghini, stellar down the back straight. Porsche, good in the twisty stuff. And put all that together, I think we're going to be in for a cracker tomorrow.
Yeah, we certainly are. But again, it does seem that the BMW has got the legs at the moment. The top three cars are all right there. The Audi looking like it's the sort of best of the rest at the moment for them. So we'll see how Williams can make that work. But the Beamer looking very strong, as you would expect. But West Competition Racing, pulling a 1-2. They'll be delighted with that. They can control the start now off the once we get going in just about. Well, not even that long. Not even a day's time we get going here for this race. So they'll be very happy with that. They have full control over the starting procedure as well. They can play some team tactics if they want to do that as well up at the front end. But it is close, but towards just behind. But it was interesting. That was a great lap from Sebastian Apostol to get pull 2/10 in the end. That was I think you would say absolutely spot on, perfect lap that he managed to pull out in Super Bowl there.
Yeah, I think he'll be pretty happy with that. West Competition Racing all round are going to be very happy with how that session went, without a doubt. But yeah, very nice stuff, and a pretty healthy qualifying pole margin at the end of that. Pretty close between all of the drivers, as we would expect here in the Virtual Endurance Masters. But yeah, certainly looking like it is advantage BMW heading into the 24 hours of Paul Ricard. Doesn't look like we're going to have any interviews for this evening, so we will look to wrap up there. So thank everybody for watching tonight for the qualifying session. We will be back at midday UK time tomorrow, 1 o'clock Central European time, where 24 hours of racing will be kicking off underway. And we will see who is going to be the victors of round number 2. Will Pole Simsport be able to make their way through the field, through the mixed and tricky conditions once again? Or will it end up going the way of another team? We will have to wait and see, but definitely is one to tune in for and not one to miss. Myself, Jack Canan, Tim Peck, John Dalton, Luke Etheridge, and Christian Romano, and also Kevin Galvin will be bringing that coverage to you over the 24-hour period. We'll have quite the endurance ourselves for that one, without a shadow of a doubt. But we look forward to seeing all of you there tomorrow. And Jack, any final words from you?
Well, just make sure to tune in tomorrow. What are you doing if you're not?
Absolutely. You heard the man, and a pleasure to have you joining the comms box for the first time too, and look forward to seeing what all of the comms guys end up being able to witness during tomorrow's action. Look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible. So until then, good night then.